All right, so in today's video, I wanted to address 5 common misconceptions about ADHD that I think really need to be cleared up. I am a therapist in private practice. I own a group practice located in New York City. We specialize in the treatment of ADHD, and a lot of what I'm going to talk about today comes from my own experience as a clinician working with folks with ADHD. I'm privy to the misconceptions. I hear them all the time, not only from people who have ADHD, but from people in their lives as well, and just the general public. If you want to check out some of what we do, there'll be a link down below to the private practice website, as well as to the coaching community that I also have started. But let's just get into these misconceptions here. And again, most of what I'm going to talk about today comes from my own personal experience as a clinician, all right? I won't bore you with citing research and things like that. All right, so the first misconception that I come across a lot is that everyone with ADHD is hyper and overactive. A lot of people think that. They think that ADHD only presents as hyperactivity and just being unable to sit still, okay? This is not true, okay? This is not true at all. There is actually a type of ADHD known as inattentive type. ADHD inattentive type. And this doesn't necessarily look like bouncing off the walls, being unable to sit still. In fact, I recently read an excerpt in a book that talked about a young child who had ADHD inattentive type, and they were able to sit in their seat perfectly fine. They were able to sit still. However, they had a difficult time focusing. They would often gaze out the window. They would be daydreaming, but they were able to sit perfectly still, okay? So that is number one. We're clearing that up right now, all right? You can have ADHD and not be hyperactive, bouncing off the walls, unable to sit still. It presents differently, okay? So hopefully that helps you there. Misconception number 2, people with ADHD can't focus on anything for long periods of time. This is also false. Do some people with ADHD have a difficulty focusing? Sure, that is true. Do some people have a hard time focusing for long periods of time? Absolutely, this is also true. But is it a universal fact for everyone and anyone with ADHD? Absolutely not. In fact, if you ask someone with ADHD to engage in an activity or something they really enjoy, they can actually focus on it for a very long time. It's not always an issue of inability to focus, right? Sometimes it's actually an issue with hyper-focusing on things that are not a priority. But whatever the case may be, what we're talking about here is that people with ADHD can focus on things for long periods of time, okay? So cleared that up right there. The third misconception that I hear about a lot is ADHD is only a childhood issue and people outgrow it as they become adults. False. This used to be a misconception amongst professionals as well. But we now know there is clear evidence that ADHD is not an issue that people outgrow. Rather, ADHD is something that affects adults as well, okay? There's not much more to say about that one. You can be an adult and have ADHD. You do not outgrow it, okay? Well, I guess one thing to say about that is sometimes children will present with ADHD-like symptoms. However, they may not have ADHD. And in those cases, what you'll see is a child does outgrow some of the symptomology that looked like ADHD, but perhaps was not. Right? But that's not the case for everyone. If a child does have ADHD, they've gone through a formal assessment and diagnosis, most of the time that is going to be carried into adulthood, all right? Point being, adults can have ADHD, all right? Misconception number 4, ADHD is caused by problematic parenting. False. Not true at all. There's a lot of unnecessary guilt that parents feel when they have a child with ADHD, as if they've messed something up or it's all their fault. This is not true. We know that a large component of ADHD is genetics. And that does not have anything to do with you and your parenting style. All right, so I do want to clear that up because again, what I see mostly is that a lot of parents feel responsible for their children who have ADHD. They feel like it's their fault, they did something wrong. This is not the case. You can be the greatest parents in the world and someone can have ADHD in your family. Okay. Misconception number 5. ADD and ADHD are different diagnoses. No, people are still using ADD, attention deficit disorder. They'll say ADD, but ADD was the old label that has been replaced by ADHD, right? It was attention deficit disorder, and now it is attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. All right, so ADD no longer is in existence. Like, that is not a term anymore. It's been replaced by ADHD. They're the same exact diagnosis, but the name has changed. And of course, as time has gone on, the criteria for the diagnosis, that has changed, right? If you look at the different DSMs, but plain and simple, ADHD replaced ADD, all right? So you should start using ADHD instead of ADD. And if you're really confused, hopefully this clears it up for you. They're the same thing, all right? Anyway, I wanted to keep this video brief and to the point. I hope that this clears up some common misconceptions for you. I hope you found this helpful and educational. And I look forward to seeing you in the next video.